But that, heaven has a great sense of humor.
It certainly does, doesn't it?
And we should too. And I hope, folks realize, we're joking, but we're kind of not,
Yeah, there's a seriousness to it. But you're right, heaven does have a humor that's part of it.
Oh, heaven has a great sense of humor.
Humor is very healing if it's done,
Jesus had a great sense of humor. Just a lot of people are too far into it that they don't realize what a dry sense of humor he had and how droll he was. Could you imagine the conversations going on between Jesus and Mary?
Sure.
That we don't know about.
Oh, sure.
And the sarcasm and
I'm sure.
And the humor that was there.
Oh, yeah.
And imagine Joseph kind of being on the outs a lot of times, wondering what just happened. I mean, will somebody please tell me what the joke is?
Yeah, I would. That's me, right?
Well, I think that would be kind of funny if we were to do the Holy Family as a sitcom.
If you're a writer, you could put together.
Well, it's just a matter whether there's an audience for something like that. But
right.
I just think that people need to lighten up a little bit and understand, because we're going to talk about here eventually about the Shroud of Turin. It's really heavy stuff.
We're leading up to it, folks.
It is really heavy stuff, but hopefully with some of this background, the thing that Father Havel was telling me about the 12 men, would not die for a lie. One of them would give it up and try to make a deal to save his ass. Out of 12 people.
That would be the first thing in my thoughts.
Well, that would, if it was a fraudulent, what can I do to not do this?
We're gonna crucify you upside down.
Say, hey, can we negotiate a little bit?
Get this, Oh, sorry. Okay. Right.
JJ wants a little camera time. So with the 12 men who would not lie, and then the other thing he talked about was the Shroud of Turin. With this here, this is a small version here, and I'll inset it in so you can get a better quality view of it. But that the evidence is here. And the more I would look at this at night as I was working on the property and examining this thing as I was working, I'd take a long view of it, an up-close view of it, and I'd think about things, and I would think about, well, how did that mark or that wound happen? And I got to tell you, the marks along the striations along the backs of the thighs and the legs here are just amazing. How the Punisher, or the guy who was beating his ass with the
flagrum
is what they call it.
Yeah,
so, but it wasn't the cattails. It was the middle one with the little balls.
Right, that's right. And sometimes they have spikes in it.
Well, that'd be the cattails. That'd be for the condemned.
Correct.
For the severely condemned.
Larry's talking about all these, the lateral and the medial. You can see this going across the shroud down the legs, and that's both on the back and the front.
Give an orientation. Where's the head? Where's the feet?
Well, this is the head of the face.
Because it's folded over like a taco. We just, stretched out the blanket. It was one long piece, and it was folded over top and bottom. They can't see this when I do that, but it's one long 14-foot piece, and then the body would be laid down at the one end, and then they'd folded over the top of them. And so they were kind of like in an envelope, an open-sided envelope. So the head would be right.
This is the back of his head. That's the front of his head. And, of course, this would fold over. And then these are the burn marks of the 1532 fire. Larry's talking about the back of him actually being of
the backs of the thighs, the calves.
Backs, the calves, and the thighs. And it was very specific, wasn't it?
How it was cross-hatched.
That's right.
The Punisher would go this way, and then he'd come back across the other way.
It wasn't just random.
But there were 3 levels of punishment.
Correct.
Of tool that they could use. And Pilate didn't author. There's either just the leather straps, plain leather straps that would whip and hurt and, get you really pink and red, probably.
Yeah, some bruising.
Well, it might open you up if they hit the same spot a number of times, but I can imagine that hurting. A whip. Okay. Yeah. Okay, but it was kind of thin, so I'm trying to describe for the
leather
people.
Straps, right.
Right, but they weren't not more than maybe 1/8 of an inch in thickness. So they really weren't going to be like hitting you with the belt
right.
type of thing. But 3 to 5 of them on a strand it's going to hurt.
Sure.
Okay, especially when it's repeated all over the body. You know, the nerves are going to get excited, and it's going to really start to hit that, you know, level of intolerable pain. Really,
that would be horrific in and of
that
itself.
would be bad.
Yeah.
So then there was a middle level which had those same straps with little metal balls at the end of it. That these balls were probably 1/8 of an inch in diameter, and so with enough of those on there, these things would add weight and would add impact onto the skin, and they would actually then could actually cut into the skin and open it up a little bit if it was repeated beating or if it was hit with enough, you know, velocity. Sure, it's going to rip you open there. Metal versus flesh. I know who's going to win that game. And then there was the third level, and that was where they had the leather straps then with a little hook, a razor-type hook on the end of it, or a metal barb that would be like the cat tails or the cat's claws. And that was a third form of punishment that could have gone to.
Yeah.
And so whether they would start off with the one and graduate up, if they were trying to get somebody to admit to something or give evidence or, you know, whatever, tell us, you know, the secrets and stuff like this. But what Pilate chose for Jesus was to go right to the middle form, which was the little balls. And I think what Pilate was trying to do, because if a man was condemned, they would go right to the claws, because the Romans were trying to speed up the process of dying. They wanted to have enough of a spectacle to where it got to the people that they were trying to influence. That was the people in the town and whatnot. But it got to be so commonplace that they didn't even stop and watch the condemned walking through the streets. They did stop to watch Jesus walk through the streets because this was special, you know. And so not all the Jews or even the Roman citizens were all that excited about Jesus, but they were going to watch because there were two other guys going up at the same time, and this is so commonplace that there wasn't much to really pay attention to. It's just another guy dying. They didn't really care that much. It just happened all the time. And they do like thousands in a month. But that's just crazy. I mean, but that was what they were doing. Well, when they had the condemned guys, they'd just go right to the cat's claws, which would rip them open and speed up their bleed out and dying. But with Jesus, Pilate said, we'll just go with the little balls. Because I think Pilate was kind of hoping that they'd beat Jesus' ass in front of everybody, you know,
and
so bad.
And they wouldn't.
And then
him.
they lose interest. Say, well, that's enough. You know, the guys, you know, I'm satisfied. You know, the crowd would start to dissipate, but they didn't. And so they took him on to the next level. And that was, you know, he condemned him. He was hoping that they would say, hey, crowd reprieval. No, they didn't give it up. They said, keep crucifying him. And that's what we ended up having happen. But when you see the evidence here, I think that Pilate really didn't want to kill Jesus.
No, he didn't. He didn't. He was hoping that they would back away from it because he knew he was an innocent man.
He knew there was nothing wrong, but he didn't care. He was just another dirty Jew to him, you know. And this is
well, Pilate he was trying to please both ends because politically he was hoping to get out of his area.
He wanted a promotion,
and he wanted to go back to Rome. So he was thinking, as long as there's not an insurrection,
right.
I'm gonna, you know, I'll be fine. But what ended up happening is Caesar was incensed that, because you got to remember, our Lord said, "Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar," the money. Remember, He's thinking, well, this guy is good as gold.
Well,
why would you kill him?
There was potential there, and I think that there were people in the Roman administrations, if you will, that saw we can use this.
You betcha.
Because what gets people to comply more than anything, and we're seeing it in today's world.
Money.
Well, intention.
Right.
You create conflict. If you got everything's at peace, they really don't want everything at peace. You always have to have a boogeyman someplace, a bad guy. You know, that's why when we had this era of reasonable peace, even though we had the Vietnam things going on, but after World War II, we had this Cold War going on, and things thriving on this continent, and people were expanding, people were building,
sure, the 50s,
families were growing.
60s, yeah.
You know, we had a good solid minority class that was, doing well for themselves. And then the mid-'60s came along and it all got destroyed, because...
Imagine how that collapsed.
Well, because they didn't have enough tension. They needed more tension so the elites could keep the power coming down. Same thing was going on in Rome at that time. A little bit of tension in the community helps you keep the policing in effect. So to have it completely laissez-faire, then people are going to say, well, who cares? What business is it of yours? Type of thing. Well, I'll make it my business. But they'll comply a whole lot better if there's a little tension in the world. And that's what we're seeing today. They don't want things to be easy. They want things to be tense. They want things to be one side or the other because that's what sells the news and that's what,
generate the money in the wars.
And keeps you going after each other rather than after them.
Right. Well, they run to the bank with all that.
Right. Yeah.
But
so
it's crazy. But you're right. Pilate did not.
I don't think Pilate wanted Jesus dead at all. But he was kind of ambivalent. He said he's like, look, everyone's against me on this thing. Be done with it.
He gave in.
Herod kind of like crapped him back in his lap, and
yeah.
He was hoping that Herod would do it, but I think the wives were at war with each other or something like that. So there's all kinds of drama going on here behind the scenes. So, but in the meantime, Jesus was getting his ass handed to him, and here's the evidence of it.
The best evidence. There was a book written that was called Best Evidence, by a guy named David Lifton, and they looked at the Kennedy assassination, and they said, well, he was talking that Lifton was doing investigations, and they said, there was an attorney said, well, the best evidence is the gun and Oswald and but Lifton said, that's not the best evidence. The best evidence is the body of the president. And so what was seen in Dallas at Parkland Hospital varies to what was seen in Washington, D.C. At that point, he was correct.